I am Audrey Mason, 32 years old, and I never imagined my own brother would uninvite me from his wedding while keeping my $65,000 deposit. When Ethan asked me to be his best woman, I was overjoyed. As someone who owns multiple hospitality businesses, I was happy to offer my venues at a family discount. Then came that devastating phone call from the wedding planner. What happened next shocked everyone, especially when they realized exactly who they were dealing with. Before I continue with my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I built my business empire from nothing but determination and grit. Growing up, it was always just Ethan and me against the world. Our parents worked multiple jobs, which meant they were rarely home. This left me only 7 years older than Ethan as his primary caretaker from a young age. I learned responsibility early, packing his lunches, helping with homework, and attending his school events when our parents could not. Those early years created a bond between us that was unshakable. When Ethan had nightmares, it was my bed he would crawl into. When he scored his first soccer goal, it was me cheering the loudest from the sidelines. And when our parents' marriage fell apart during his freshman year of high school, we made a pact to always put each other first. I started my first business at 22, a small event planning company that operated out of my tiny apartment. Ethan, still in college then, would help me on weekends, setting up decorations and charming clients with his easy smile. Those long nights of hard work, shared pizza, and dreams of the future cemented our relationship as not just siblings but best friends. As my business grew, I reinvested every penny, eventually acquiring my first venue at 25. Lux Venues was born, followed by Elite Catering 2 years later. By the time I turned 30, I had purchased my first boutique hotel, which grew into the Stellar Hotels chain. Through it all, Ethan was my biggest cheerleader, just as I supported his career in architectural design. When Ethan met Madison Preston at a charity gala 3 years ago, I was initially happy for him. She was beautiful, well-educated, and seemed to make my brother laugh. But something about her felt off to me. Perhaps it was the way her smile never quite reached her eyes, or how she would subtly correct Ethan in public. Still, I kept my reservations to myself, determined to support my brother. The Prestons were old money with connections throughout the city. Charlotte Preston, Madison's mother, was known for her elaborate fundraisers and iron grip on the local social scene. Richard Preston headed an investment firm and sat on multiple corporate boards. They lived in a mansion in the wealthiest part of town and made sure everyone knew exactly how important they were. Despite my success, I sensed their disapproval from our first meeting. Charlotte asked about my business with a tone that suggested she was humoring me rather than showing genuine interest. Richard made comments about how unusual it was for a young woman to run multiple companies instead of focusing on family. I smiled through it all for Ethan's sake. When Ethan proposed to Madison after a year of dating, I threw them an engagement party at my newest venue. It was during this celebration that I first noticed the dynamics at play. Charlotte commandeered the event, rearranging my carefully planned decorations and adjusting the menu without consulting me. Madison deferred to her mother on everything while Ethan stood by looking increasingly uncomfortable. Later that night, I found Ethan alone on the balcony, staring into his champagne glass. "Penny for your thoughts, little brother?" I asked, bumping his shoulder with mine. "Just thinking about how different our families are," he replied with a sigh. "The Prestons are very traditional." "Is that a problem?" I asked carefully. Ethan shook his head quickly. No. Madison is worth it. I just wish they could be more accepting of different ways of doing things." When he asked me to be his best woman instead of having a traditional best man, I was touched beyond words. Despite the Prestons' raised eyebrows at breaking tradition, Ethan insisted. "You have always been my best friend, Audrey," he said. "I want you standing next to me on the most important day of my life." I hugged him fiercely, hoping that despite my misgivings about Madison and her family, this would truly bring Ethan happiness. Little did I know the storm that was brewing behind their perfectly composed facades. That night, I overheard Charlotte talking to Richard as they were leaving the engagement party. "We will need to work on him," she said quietly. "The sister is going to be a problem. Too independent, too opinionated." Richard nodded. "Every family has its challenges. We will help Madison guide him in the right direction." I pretended not to hear, but their words stayed with me. Still, I held on to hope that we could all become family in the true sense of the word. Ethan deserved that harmony in his life. I promised myself I would try my hardest to make it work for him. The wedding planning began in earnest 6 months before the big day. Madison selected my flagship property, Mason Estate, as their venue. It was a restored historical mansion with expansive gardens and a ballroom that could accommodate 300 guests. Normally, the venue, along with catering and accommodations, would cost around $120,000, but I offered them a substantial family discount requiring only a $65,000 deposit. "This is so generous," Audrey Ethan said, hugging me tightly after I presented them with the adjusted contract. Madison smiled tightly. "Yes, thank you. Mom will be pleased with the savings." I should have recognized the warning sign in her response. It was never about appreciating my gesture, but about how it would look to her mother. Charlotte arrived at our first planning meeting with a binder 3 inches thick and a personal assistant in tow. She barely acknowledged my ownership of the venue, speaking instead to my events director as if I were merely a bystander. "The Preston name carries certain expectations," Charlotte explained while reviewing the preliminary plans. "Every detail must reflect our family's standing in the community." I bit my tongue and reminded myself this was Ethan's day. When Charlotte dismissed my suggestion for the table arrangements, claiming they were too modern, I simply nodded. When she insisted on changing the proposed menu despite my chef's recommendations, I acquiesced. But when she began treating my staff disrespectfully, I had to intervene. "Charlotte," I said carefully, "my team has handled events for senators and celebrities. I assure you they know what they are doing." She gave me a cold smile. "Of course, dear. But this is not just any event. This is my daughter's wedding." The implication was clear. Nothing I had done before was as important as this. My achievements meant little in her eyes. As the weeks progressed, Ethan became increasingly withdrawn. The brother who once called me daily now went days without responding to my texts. When we did meet, Madison was always present, her hand possessively on his arm, jumping in to answer questions directed at him. "Ethan, is everything okay?" I asked during a rare moment alone while Madison was in a fitting. "Just stressed with all the wedding stuff," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "Madison wants everything to be perfect." "And what do you want?" I pressed gently. He looked startled by the question, as if no one had bothered to ask him that before. "I want Madison to be happy." "That is not what I asked," I said. Before he could respond, Madison returned immediately, sensing our serious conversation. "What are you two discussing so intensely?" she asked with forced lightness. "Just sibling stuff," I replied. "Well, no secrets from your future wife, right, babe?" Madison said, linking her arm through Ethan's. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Of course not." Madison's bridezilla behavior escalated as the wedding date approached. She changed her mind about the flowers 3 times each arrangement, more elaborate and expensive than the last. She demanded that the entire venue be repainted in a specific shade of cream that would better complement her photos. When I explained that such a request was unreasonable with only 2 months until the wedding, she burst into tears. "Everything is ruined," she wailed while Ethan tried to comfort her. "Your sister does not want me to have my perfect day." "That is not what I said," I replied calmly. "I simply cannot have the historical woodwork in a landmarked building repainted on such short notice. There are permits required, specialized painters needed." "See," Madison turned to Ethan. "She is always making things difficult." I watched my brother's face, hoping he would defend me, but he simply looked tired. "Audrey, is there anything you can do? Some compromise?" That was the moment I realized how deep under their influence he had fallen. The Ethan I knew would never have asked me to compromise the integrity of my business for an unreasonable demand. "We can add cream drapery and lighting that will create the effect you want without altering the structure," I offered, professional smile firmly in place. Charlotte, who had been observing the exchange with narrowed eyes, finally spoke. "I suppose that will have to do, though. I know several venue owners who would bend over backward to accommodate such a simple request." I bit back the retort that threatened to escape. Those venue owners she referenced were likely people who could be bullied with the Preston name and money. I had worked too hard to establish my reputation to compromise my business standards, even for family. Later that evening, I discovered that Madison and Charlotte had gone behind my back, contacting my vendors directly to make changes to the contracts. They had upgraded the floral arrangements and changed the menu without consulting me, adding thousands to the final cost. When confronted, Madison acted surprised that I would be upset. "We thought we were helping," she said innocently. "Taking some of the burden off you since you are so busy with your other events." "Any changes need to go through me," I insisted. "This is still my business and I am responsible for what happens at my venues." "Maybe that is the problem," Charlotte interjected smoothly. "Family and business do not mix well. Perhaps it would be better if we paid the full price and worked with your staff directly rather than involving you personally." The suggestion stung. They were trying to push me out of my role in my own brother's wedding. When I brought this up to Ethan later, he sighed deeply. "They are just trying to help in their way, Audrey. You know how important this wedding is to Madison. Could you just go along with it? For me?" His pleading eyes broke my heart. My brother, once so strong and independent, was asking me to step aside and let others run roughshod over both of us. But I loved him too much to deny him. "Fine," I conceded, "but only because it is you asking." The relief on his face was palpable, but it did nothing to ease the growing knot of anxiety in my stomach. Something was very wrong with this situation, and I was becoming increasingly isolated from the brother I had always protected. 3 months before the wedding, tensions reached a new high during the cake tasting. I had arranged for the best pastry chef in the city, an old friend who had created desserts for celebrities and dignitaries to present options for their wedding cake. Chef Andre had prepared 6 exquisite samples, each one a work of art. As we all sat around the table in the private tasting room of my downtown restaurant, I noticed Madison texting under the table while Chef Andre passionately described each creation. "This one features Tahitian vanilla bean with a raspberry chambered filling," he explained, presenting a delicate slice. "It is lovely," I commented, "but perhaps too sweet for a summer wedding. What do you think, Ethan?" Before my brother could answer, Charlotte cut in. "Madison and I have already discussed the cake design. We want the 7-tier structure we saw in Royal Wedding magazine, with the gold leaf detailing." Chef Andre looked uncomfortable. "Madam, such a structure would require internal supports and would serve 400 people. I thought the guest list was 300. "Extra cake is better than not enough," Charlotte replied dismissively. "And we want fondant, not your buttercream suggestion. It photographs better." "But buttercream tastes significantly better," I pointed out. Charlotte gave me a patronizing look. "Audrey dear, no one actually eats wedding cake. It is about the presentation, the moment of cutting it together. Taste is secondary." I looked to Ethan for support, but he was studying the tabletop intently. Madison finally looked up from her phone with a tight smile. "Mom knows best about these things," she said with finality. "We will go with her suggestion." Chef Andre caught my eye, and I gave him a subtle nod to proceed as they wished. It was their wedding, after all, even if every decision seemed to move further from what I knew Ethan would actually want. The situation deteriorated further when Madison complained to Ethan that I was overstepping. "Your sister keeps trying to impose her ideas on our wedding," she said during a family dinner at the Prestons mansion. "I know she means well, but this is our day, not hers." I sat there, fork suspended midair, stunned by the unfairness of the accusation when I had been bending over backward to accommodate their increasingly outlandish demands. "Perhaps Audrey does not understand how these events should be handled in our circles," Charlotte added, sipping her wine. "Not everyone is exposed to the proper way of doing things." Richard Preston cleared his throat. "Speaking of proper ways, Audrey, have you considered taking on investors for your little hotel chain? I have some connections who might be interested in helping you expand. With the right guidance, you could really make something of yourself." The condescension in his tone was unmistakable. My little hotel chain that had been featured in Travel and Leisure as one of the top boutique hotel groups in the country. "Thank you, Richard, but I prefer maintaining complete control of my companies," I replied evenly. "And we are already expanding into 3 new locations next year." "Admirable," he said with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "But everyone needs help sometimes. You cannot expect to compete with the big players all on your own. A young woman without a business background, well." Dad Ethan finally spoke up. "Audrey has done amazing things with her businesses. She does not need help." I shot him a grateful look, but Charlotte quickly redirected the conversation. Speaking of needing help, Audrey, is there anyone special in your life yet? You are not getting any younger, dear. 32 is at TikTok. Madison giggled behind her napkin while I fought to maintain my composure. I am focused on my career right now. I answered the standard response I gave to such intrusive questions. Such a shame, Charlotte sighed dramatically. Some women just are not meant for family life, I suppose. Too independent for their own good. The dig was clear and I saw Ethan wince. But once again, he said nothing to defend me. The next blow came when I discovered Madison and Charlotte had changed several of my carefully negotiated contracts behind my back. They had switched the photography team without telling me, canceled the string quartet I had booked as a special surprise for Ethan, and altered the menu to include dishes that would require my kitchen to source ingredients out of season at exorbitant costs. I confronted Madison during a final walkthrough of the venue, trying to keep my tone professional despite my growing anger. Madison, you cannot keep making these changes without consulting me. Not only is it disrespectful to me as the venue owner, but it puts my staff in an impossible position. Madison's face hardened. I am the bride. This is my wedding. Yes, but this is my business. There are contracts in place, vendors who have been planning for months based on our agreements. Contracts can be changed, she replied with a dismissive wave. Mom says you are being difficult because you cannot stand not being the center of attention for once. I took a deep breath, struggling to maintain my professional demeanor. This has nothing to do with attention. This is about respect and proper business practices. No, Madison stepped closer, dropping her usually sweet facade. This is about you not being able to let go of your brother. You have controlled him his entire life, and you cannot stand that he is choosing me and my family now. Her words hit me like a physical blow. That is not true. I have only ever wanted what is best for Ethan. What is best for him is to start fresh with his new family, without your constant interference, she snapped. Maybe you should focus on finding your own family instead of clinging to your brother. The argument escalated until we were both raising our voices, something I rarely did in a professional setting. It ended only when Ethan walked in, his face falling as he realized what was happening. Later that evening, he came to my condo looking exhausted. Audrey, please. Madison is stressed about the wedding. You know how important family is to me, and I need you both to get along. She accused me of controlling you, I said quietly, after everything we have been through together. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. She did not mean it. Wedding planning is stressful for everyone. Ethan, can you not see what is happening? They are isolating you, changing you. Not everything is a conspiracy, Audrey, he replied, with unusual sharpness. Sometimes people just want things done their way. Can you please just go along with it? For me? I looked at my brother, the person I had protected and supported all my life, now asking me to ignore my instincts and professional boundaries for the sake of his fiancée's whims. Fine. I finally said the word, tasting bitter in my mouth. I will try. For you. He hugged me with obvious relief, but as I watched him leave, I could not shake the feeling that I was losing him piece by piece to the Preston family's influence. 2 weeks before the wedding, I noticed something strange happening with my staff. The venue manager avoided eye contact during our morning meeting. My catering director suddenly had to leave when I approached to ask about the final menu details. Even Jessica, the wedding planner I had personally recommended to Ethan and Madison, seemed unusually evasive. At first, I chalked it up to pre-wedding stress. Managing events of this magnitude always created tension, especially with demanding clients like the Prestons. But when conversations would abruptly stop as I entered rooms, I knew something was wrong. Is there something I should know about? I asked my assistant Cassandra, after witnessing yet another hushed conversation. Nothing specific, she replied, shuffling papers on her desk. Just last-minute wedding details. I did not believe her for a second, but I had learned to pick my battles. The Preston wedding had already created enough drama to last a lifetime. Ethan and I had a tradition of having lunch together the week before any major life event. It started when he was 12 and nervous about starting middle school. I took him out for burgers and milkshakes, and somehow it became our ritual. Before college finals, job interviews, even his proposal to Madison, we always had our special lunch. So when he texted me 3 days before our scheduled pre-wedding lunch, my heart sank. Sorry, sis, have to cancel our lunch. Too many last-minute things to take care of. Rain check. It was so unlike him to break our tradition that I immediately called, but the call went straight to voicemail. I texted back asking if everything was okay. His response came hours later. All good. Just busy. Talk soon. The knot in my stomach tightened. Something was definitely wrong. The next day, I was reviewing contracts in my office when my phone rang. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. Jessica, hi. Is everything okay with the final arrangements? There was a pause, then Jessica spoke in a voice so low I had to strain to hear her. Audrey, I need to talk to you about something, and it is really uncomfortable. What is it? I asked, instantly alert. I received some instructions from the Prestons that I am ethically obligated to inform you about, especially given our professional relationship and that you recommended me. My grip tightened on the phone. Go on. Charlotte Preston called me yesterday to inform me that your family invitation to the wedding has been canceled. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. Excuse me. Jessica took a deep breath. She said that due to ongoing tensions, the family has decided it would be best if you did not attend the ceremony or reception. However, her voice became even more uncomfortable. They would like to retain all the services you are providing and keep the deposit you paid toward those services. The room seemed to spin around me. That is impossible. Ethan would never agree to that. There was another painful pause. According to Charlotte, Ethan is aware of the decision. She said, and I am quoting here, Ethan understands that his sister's presence would only cause drama on his special day, and he agrees it is for the best. I felt as if someone had punched me in the stomach. My own brother, the person I had raised, protected, and supported, had agreed to uninvite me from his wedding while keeping the significant financial contribution I had made. Jessica, did you speak to Ethan directly about this? I managed to ask. No, she admitted. The instructions came from Charlotte, but she was very clear that it was a family decision that included Ethan and Madison. I see. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, detached and calm despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. Audrey, I am so sorry. If it helps, I think this is completely inappropriate, which is why I called you directly instead of just implementing their instructions. I have never dealt with anything like this in my career. Thank you for telling me, I said mechanically. I appreciate your professional integrity. After hanging up, I sat motionless at my desk trying to process what had just happened. My brother, my Ethan, had allowed his future in-laws to cut me out of the most important day of his life. And not only that, they expected to keep the $65,000 deposit I had paid as a gift to them. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. All those years of sacrificing for him, of putting his needs first, of building him up and supporting his dreams, and this was how he repaid me. By choosing people who saw me as nothing more than a checkbook and a service provider. I tried calling Ethan again, straight to voicemail. I texted him asking him to please call me about an urgent wedding matter. No response. I even drove to his apartment, but his car was not there. It was as if he was deliberately avoiding me, knowing what had been done. Sitting in my car outside his empty apartment, I finally allowed myself to break down. Tears came in, heaving sobs that shook my entire body. I cried for the little boy who used to look at me like I hung the moon. I cried for the bond I thought was unbreakable. Most of all, I cried for the loss of the one person I had always counted on to have my back, just as I had always had his. When the tears finally subsided, something else took their place. A cold, clear anger that crystallized my thoughts and dried my tears. I was Audrey Mason. I had built an empire from nothing. I had faced sexism, ageism, and countless other obstacles to get where I was. I would not allow myself to be discarded like this, not even by my beloved brother. If the Prestons wanted to play hardball, they were about to learn they had chosen the wrong opponent. I gave myself one night to grieve the relationship I thought I had with my brother. One night of tears, ice cream, and sad movies. Then I washed my face, put on my power suit, and prepared for battle. First, I tried reaching Ethan one more time. Call after call went unanswered. Finally, I sent a text that I knew he could not ignore. We need to talk about what Jessica told me. I am coming to your apartment at noon. Be there. No response came, but I knew he had seen it. At precisely 12 o'clock, I knocked on his door. After a long pause, it opened to reveal Ethan looking like he had not slept in days. Dark circles underlined his eyes, and his usually neat hair was disheveled. "Audrey," he said, his voice, a mixture of resignation and guilt. "Come in." I stepped into the apartment we had picked out together 2 years ago, noting the subtle changes that reflected Madison's influence. The colorful throw pillows he loved replaced with beige ones. The framed photograph of us as kids no longer on the side table. "Is it true?" I asked without preamble. "Did you agree to uninvite me from your wedding?" Ethan could not meet my eyes. "It is complicated." "Actually, it is very simple. Did you, or did you not, agree to cut me out of your wedding while keeping my $65,000 deposit?" He flinched at the directness of my question. Madison's parents thought it would be best if we avoided any potential drama. Things have been tense and they want the day to be perfect. "That does not answer my question, Ethan." He finally looked up, his eyes pleading. "I did not agree exactly. I just did not disagree strongly enough. You know how they are, Audrey. They steamroll over everything. It is easier to just go along with it." "Easier," I repeated incredulously. "It is easier to betray your sister than to stand up to your future in-laws." "You do not understand the pressure I am under," he exclaimed. "Every day it is something new with them. Every day they find some way to make me feel like I am not good enough for their daughter. The only peace I get is when I agree with whatever they want." "And what about what you want?" I asked more gently. "Do you want me at your wedding?" Before he could answer, the door opened, and Madison walked in, stopping short when she saw me. "What is she doing here?" she asked Ethan, as if I were not standing right there. "We are having a conversation," I replied coolly, "about why I was uninvited from the wedding." Madison's expression hardened. "That decision was made for the good of everyone involved. You have been difficult throughout this entire process, questioning every choice, trying to impose your ideas. I have bent over backward to accommodate your increasingly unreasonable demands," I countered. "I have given you steep discounts on services, rearranged my staff's schedules, and tolerated disrespect from your mother. And this is how you repay me." "This is exactly why you were uninvited," Madison snapped. "This drama, this victimhood. It is always about you, is it not? Poor Audrey, who had to raise her brother. Poor Audrey, who built her business all alone. We are tired of hearing it." I turned to Ethan, whose face had gone pale. "Is that how you feel too? Are you tired of me and everything I have done for you?" Before he could answer, the door opened again, and Charlotte Preston swept in, immaculately dressed as always. Her eyes narrowed when she saw me. "Audrey, this is inappropriate. We made our decision clear through the proper channels." "Proper channels?" I repeated. "You mean going behind my back to the wedding planner I recommended? There is nothing proper about what you have done." Charlotte sighed, as if dealing with a petulant child. "Sometimes families need distance to heal. We simply feel that your presence would create tension on what should be Madison and Ethan's perfect day. And my $65,000 deposit was keeping that part of the healing process too." "Business is business," Charlotte replied with a dismissive wave. "You agreed to provide services. We still expect those services to be rendered." I looked between the three of them, Madison smug, Charlotte condescending, and Ethan looking trapped and miserable. Something inside me hardened into resolve. "Let me make something perfectly clear," I said, my voice low and steady. "I own the venue where you plan to hold this wedding. I own the catering company preparing your food. I own the hotel chain where your out-of-town guests are staying. All of these services were provided at a steep discount as my gift to my brother." Charlotte's smug expression faltered slightly. "If I am not welcome at this wedding," I continued, "then perhaps my venues and services are not welcome either." Madison gasped. "You cannot do that. We have contracts." "Contracts that you have already altered repeatedly without my consent," I countered. "Contracts that were predicated on a family relationship that you have now terminated." "This is blackmail," Charlotte hissed. "No, this is consequences," I corrected. "You thought you could discard me while keeping the benefits of my hard work and generosity. You were wrong." I turned to Ethan, whose eyes had gone wide with realization. "You have a choice to make, little brother. Right here, right now. What kind of man do you want to be? One who stands by the sister who has always stood by him, or one who lets others dictate who deserves to be in his life? The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Ethan. His gaze darted between Madison, Charlotte, and me, the weight of the moment visible in every line of his face. "I need you at my wedding," he finally said, his voice quiet but firm. "All of this, the venue, the food, none of it matters if you are not there, Audrey." Ethan Madison shrieked, "You cannot be serious. After everything we have planned—" "The plans can change," he replied, standing straighter now. "But my sister is non-negotiable." Charlotte's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This is unacceptable. Richard will hear about this. There will be legal consequences." I smiled, feeling more like myself than I had in months. "I look forward to that conversation, Charlotte. My lawyers certainly will, too." With that, I turned and walked out, leaving them in stunned silence. The confrontation had gone exactly as I had hoped, but I knew this was far from over. The Prestons would not give up easily, and I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. Once in my car, I immediately called my executive team for an emergency meeting. Within an hour, my conference room was filled with the heads of all my companies along with my legal counsel. "The Preston wedding is now a top priority," I informed them. "Either we are proceeding with me as an honored guest, or we are canceling all services. There is no middle ground." My venue manager looked concerned. "Canceling with just 2 weeks' notice will leave a gap in our schedule that we cannot fill." "I understand the financial implications," I acknowledged. "But this is about more than money. This is about maintaining the integrity of our business relationships and my personal boundaries." My legal counsel, Patricia, reviewed the contracts. They have made numerous unauthorized changes that technically constitute breaches. We have grounds to terminate if necessary, though it would be cleaner to reach a new agreement. I nodded. "Prepare for both scenarios, and place holds on all services until further notice." As my team dispersed to implement the plan, my phone began to ring. First Madison, then Charlotte, then Richard Preston himself. I let them all go to voicemail. This was a power play, and I needed them to understand that they could not reach me on their terms anymore. Richard's message was predictably threatening. "This is a breach of contract with serious legal implications. I have already contacted my attorneys. Expect to hear from them shortly." Charlotte was more personal in her attack. "Your behavior is proving exactly why we made the right decision to exclude you. Ethan deserves better than a sister who would ruin his wedding out of spite." Madison's message was tearful. "How could you do this to me? This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and you are destroying it." Not one of them acknowledged their role in creating this situation. Not one took responsibility for the initial betrayal. By evening, my phone lit up with a call from Ethan. This one I answered. "Can we meet?" he asked, his voice steadier than it had been earlier. "Just you and me, like old times?" We agreed to meet at our favorite coffee shop, a small place where we had spent countless hours over the years planning our futures. When I arrived, Ethan was already there, 2 cups of our usual orders on the table. "I am sorry," he said as soon as I sat down. "I am so incredibly sorry, Audrey." For which part I asked, not ready to let him off the hook just yet. "All of it," he replied, running a hand through his hair. "For not standing up to them sooner, for letting them treat you that way, for forgetting even for a moment everything you have done for me." I could see the genuine remorse in his eyes. "What happened to you, Ethan? The brother I know would never have let anyone come between us." "I lost myself," he admitted. "From the moment I proposed to Madison, it was like being caught in a current. Her parents had opinions about everything, and Madison always deferred to them. It was easier to just go along with it than to fight constantly. But that is no excuse for how I treated you." "No, it is not," I agreed. "When you left today, something clicked back into place," he continued. "I remembered who I am and who has always been there for me. I told Madison that either you are fully included in our wedding or there would not be a wedding." I raised an eyebrow. "How did that go over?" A small smile played at his lips. "About as well as you would expect. There was yelling, crying threats to call off the wedding. But then something unexpected happened. After her parents left, Madison broke down in a different way." "What do you mean?" "She admitted that she feels as trapped as I do sometimes. Her parents have controlled every aspect of her life, and she does not know how to stand up to them. The wedding planning made it worse because Charlotte took over completely. I was surprised by this revelation. So what happens now? I told Madison that we need to establish boundaries with her parents if our marriage is going to work. And the first boundary is that my sister is an essential part of my life. I felt a weight lifting from my chest, and she agreed. Not only agreed, but suggested we meet with her parents together to present a united front. The next day, we did just that. In my office, with Ethan and Madison on one side of the table and Charlotte and Richard on the other, I laid out the new terms. The wedding will proceed as planned with a few adjustments I stated professionally. First, I will be restored to my position as Ethan's best woman. Second, all unauthorized changes to the contracts will be reviewed and properly approved. Third, the family discount will remain in place, but with the understanding that it is a gift from me to Ethan and Madison, not an entitlement. Richard bristled. This is highly irregular. You cannot simply dictate terms after threatening to cancel services. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. My business is my rules. You are welcome to find alternative venues and services with 2 weeks' notice, but I doubt you will find anything comparable. Charlotte turned to Madison. Surely you do not agree with this. We can find another venue. Your father has connections. To everyone's surprise, Madison shook her head. No, Mom, Audrey is right. We have been unfair to her, and it stops now. She is going to be my sister-in-law, and I want us to start over on better terms. Charlotte looked like she had swallowed something sour. I see I am outnumbered. It is not about numbers, Ethan said firmly. It is about respect. Audrey deserves better than how we have treated her, and so do I. Richard, ever the businessman, recognized when he was beaten. Fine. We will proceed with the original arrangements with Audrey included. With one addition, I added. From now on, all wedding-related decisions will be made by Ethan and Madison, not by proxy through either set of parents. Charlotte started to protest, but Richard placed a restraining hand on her arm. Agreed, he said tersely. As they filed out of my office, Madison hung back. I really am sorry, Audrey. I got caught up in what my mother wanted and forgot to think about what would make Ethan happy. I hope we can start fresh. I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation, but found only genuine regret. I would like that, I replied cautiously. For Ethan's sake, and maybe eventually for our own. After they left, Ethan hugged me tightly. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I nearly gave up on myself. Never, I promised. You are stuck with me for life, little brother. As I watched him leave, I felt cautiously optimistic. The road ahead would not be easy, but at least we were back on the same path again. The wedding day arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze, as if the universe itself was acknowledging our hard-won peace. The revised event was smaller than originally planned, 300 guests trimmed to 200, with the focus on people who truly mattered to the couple rather than Charlotte's social connections. I stood in a private room with Ethan, adjusting his bow tie, as I had done countless times before important events in his life. Nervous, I asked, smoothing his lapels. About marrying Madison? No, he replied with a genuine smile. About whether Mom Preston will behave herself. Absolutely. I laughed. She will. Richard seems to have her on a short leash since our confrontation. The 2 weeks leading up to the wedding had seen remarkable changes. Ethan had found his voice again, standing firm when Charlotte tried to reassert control over last-minute details. Madison had surprised everyone by backing him up, revealing a backbone none of us knew she possessed. I never thanked you properly, Ethan said, suddenly serious. For what? For forcing me to wake up. For not letting me take the easy way out by going along with what everyone else wanted. You reminded me who I am. I felt my eyes growing misty. Just returning the favor, little brother. You have done the same for me many times. Still, he insisted, what you did took courage. Standing up to all of us, being willing to cancel everything to maintain your self-respect. I admire that more than you know. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Madison peeked in, breaking tradition by seeing Ethan before the ceremony. Can I have a moment with Audrey? She asked. Ethan looked surprised but nodded, stepping out to give us privacy. Madison was breathtaking in her gown, simpler and more elegant than the overwrought creation Charlotte had initially insisted upon. "I wanted to give you this," she said, holding out a small box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 2 intertwined hearts. "It is a thank you," Madison explained, "for not giving up on us even when we gave you every reason to." I was touched by the gesture. "It is beautiful, Madison. Thank you." "My whole life I have watched my mother run roughshod over everyone to get her way," she confessed. "I thought that was normal, that it was how strong women behaved. But you showed me there is a difference between being strong and being a bully. You stood your ground without becoming what you were fighting against." It was perhaps the most insightful thing I had ever heard her say, and it gave me hope for my brother's future with this woman. "We are family now," I said, clasping the bracelet around my wrist. "We will figure it out together." The ceremony itself was everything a wedding should be, full of genuine emotion and promises made with clear eyes. Standing beside Ethan as his best woman, I felt a deep sense of rightness. This was where I belonged, supporting my brother, as I always had, but now respecting his choice to build a new family alongside his old one. Even Charlotte seemed moved by the sincerity of the vows. I caught her wiping away a tear during Ethan's heartfelt speech about building a life based on mutual respect and love. At the reception, I gave my speech focusing on the journey Ethan and I had shared and the joy of welcoming Madison into our small but mighty family. I did not mention the drama of the past months. Some things were better left in the past. To my surprise, Richard sought me out afterward, glass of champagne in hand. "That was well said, Audrey, and I owe you an apology." "Do you?" I asked, not making it easy for him. "Yes," he admitted. "I underestimated you both as a businesswoman and as a sister. The way you handled this situation showed more integrity and backbone than I initially gave you credit for." Coming from Richard Preston, this was high praise indeed. "Thank you. I hope we can move forward with more mutual respect." I would like that he agreed. And perhaps we might discuss some business opportunities in the future as equals this time. I smiled. I would be open to that conversation. Later in the evening, I found myself standing alone for a moment, watching Ethan and Madison dance, both looking happier and more authentic than I had seen them in months. Charlotte approached, her expression unreadable. "Beautiful wedding," she commented. "Your venue did not disappoint." "Thank you," I replied cautiously. She seemed to struggle with what to say next. "I misjudged you, Audrey. I saw your independence as a threat rather than the asset it is. My generation was taught that women should support from the shadows, not lead from the front." "Times change," I said simply. "Indeed they do," she agreed. "And sometimes old dogs can learn new tricks with the right teacher." She offered me a small smile before moving away to join her husband. As the night wound down, Ethan and Madison found me for one last conversation before departing for their honeymoon. "Thank you for everything," Ethan said, hugging me tightly. "This day would not have happened without you in more ways than one." "Be happy," I told them both. "And remember that true family stands by you without trying to control you." Madison nodded. "We will not forget the lesson or who taught it to us." As I watched them leave, I reflected on the journey we had all taken. The pain had been real, the betrayal deep, but the resolution had brought growth and understanding that might never have come otherwise. Sometimes the hardest confrontations lead to the most authentic relationships. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to preserve what truly matters: your self-respect and the integrity of your boundaries. Have you ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted, or found yourself being pushed aside by people who still expected to benefit from your generosity? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about setting boundaries and maintaining your self-worth, even with the people closest to you. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that true family is defined by actions, not just blood or marriage certificates. I wish you the strength to stand up for yourself when it matters most, just as I did.